Hey, good evening, everyone. John Henry Soto here. Welcome to JHS Interviews. Tonight, I have the creator and the host of My Peeps Show Podcast, Anthony Rece, is going to be on. And he's just a really great guy. I don't even know what to say. We're just going to get started here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to JHS Interviews, Anthony Rece. What's up, my man?
Hey, everybody, John. This is so awesome. This is great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is my pleasure, man. My pleasure. So, as we talked about a few minutes ago before we went live, we met on the site called indie.com, and it was a place where you can submit your short, funny videos and stuff, and you win prizes and stuff. And I won a couple of times. You won a bunch of times.
No, I don't think I won that much. You won definitely much more than me. So don't try to make. Yeah, you did. Trust me. Not so much. But no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I remember you always winning, also, and you were just so funny in your videos and stuff. And so right away, we kind of just became friends on that platform, and it was just a lot of fun watching you actually grow as a creator, creative content.
Oh, thanks.
And then just as we chatted and stuff a couple of times on the phone, I think, or maybe even I don't remember how.
I think it's through Facebook Messenger was kind of Messenger, really how it got started.
And it just really I just really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I totally I'm super excited that you're here and that you're doing this podcast, and we definitely want to dive in and talk more about it for sure.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. And John, I'm looking over the contract that your manager sent over. And so I'm sorry. Actually, I've already messed up. I'm supposed to call you Mr. Soto.
Yeah.
I do apologize that.
Mr.
And
Soto,
it says, do not look into your glass eye. So those two things, and I should be good. So I apologize for saying John originally.
Yeah, anything that's in crayon, that's really important.
No, this is, we met through indie.com, which was such an amazing site that I had just happened to stumble upon. And it was really mind-blowing to me that you could just upload your videos and have people from around the world, watch them, number one, but number two, actually vote and, get their opinion about your stuff, which was both exhilarating and scary,
It was, right?
And I seen your videos, and as I mentioned to you, and as we've both talked about, it was a kindred spirits thing between you and I. I seen in your humor immediately that it's something I connected with. And so, indie.com was definitely the beginning of this friendship. I'm very thankful for that, and you're in your videos, and trust me, you won more than me because you had some really, and like you were doing stuff like people, I don't know how many people have seen, your old indie videos, but like you were just doing stuff in your kitchen. Right. And that's what's so great about it. Like it was a character. I love characters. And you and I have talked about Bob Newhart and, Tim Conway. And I love that you had that appreciation for that old school comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I actually admired by your performance when you did a character named Todd that just completely.
Yeah, Todd.
I was just laughing because there was no. You're trying to figure out, is he being like, what's the point of what he's trying to get accomplished?
Yeah.
And then you really have to figure, okay, that's who he is. He's just kind of like.
Oh, and so check it out. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like right here, my oldest son had painted this years ago. You see that? I got that hanging up in the room.
There he is.
Yeah. So Todd was just this character. I was doing this for some background for our listeners, viewers. I had decided to do like a dating website, and these single men would send in their videos, but they were quite different. And I believe Todd was my very first one. And where he came from was, I've had people say they remind him a lot of Kip from Napoleon Dynamite. And that's somebody, maybe subconsciously it was there. But when I did the character, it was just me shaving. I've always been told, because I'll grow beards and mustaches. You've seen I do the whole 9 yards. And I've always been told, oh, you look like a completely different person when you shave. And so I thought, well, this might be good for the comedy videos. And so I shaved and left a mustache. And I hadn't done a mustache, attempted a mustache till I was 16. And I don't even know if that was called a mustache. We won't even go there with that one. Yeah. And so here's this weird looking guy. And I found some safety glasses and found some clothes at a Goodwill. And I went out to a park like 7 o'clock in the morning with a camera. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
And
totally
I was like, the first person I have come up to me, I'm going to ask them if they would mind just waving, and the video's on YouTube. Check it out. Just me laughing and Todd. But anyways, it kind of, everybody loves Todd, and did a couple others. And and let's not forget about Lloyd here. Your character, Lloyd, we need to do a video. Lloyd is legendary as well, my friend.
Lloyd was where did that? Well, that came from the idea that because you talk years ago, I was in the health club space. I was working in health clubs, managing, and a guy came over to do a training for health clubs, and it was a health club, for customer service. And he was, and not to knock anyone that's up there in age. I'm up there in age. I'm not like but I still have a youthful thought. This guy had been doing customer service for like 40 years.
Oh, wow. So he was
he didn't have and so anyway, he had these ideas of saying like one of the things that he said to people was like, if somebody's upset, extremely upset in front of you, just stand back for a second and say, take it easy. And I thought to myself, you never, ever tell a New Yorker, that's where I'm from, to stand back and say, take it easy. You never say that. That's a trigger. That's just gonna launch them right off. So I remember sitting there listening to this guy, and then I just stuck with me. And then I thought, what about a guy who's the president of customer services, and he's just so nervous, and you can tell he's just on edge. He doesn't know exactly what he's doing, but he's running the show and he's doing training videos, because this is what's popular. So that's where that idea came from. But it would be fantastic to see what Lloyd and maybe Todd moves to New York and interviews at Lloyd's company for a job.
that we have somehow, even if it's remotely at home, we have to have something. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, I love the creative mind because I see things the same way. Not to say that I have a creative mind by any means, but listen to you talk about you was listening to the guy on the phone. And you heard something, and something clicked in a character. I've always kind of had that in my brain where I'll see somebody, or I'll see somebody do something, or I'll see something or a situation, and like it's always like you're always trying to work out a skit or a character or thing like that. And do you have that as well? Because it feels like you do.
You know what I used to do when I was younger, when I was and I had this girlfriend before I was married, obviously. Or maybe it was a month ago. No, I'm just kidding. It was a long time ago. And I remember there was this girl. We were sitting in the park, and what I would do is if people were walking, talking, I would just do the conversation of what they're talking about based on their body movements. And so if the guy raises his hand, he goes, "Yeah, I want to go to this Chinese restaurant over there." He goes, "I don't want to go to Chinese restaurant." And I would just do the whole thing. And that I remember doing that, and I thought to myself, I did that once, like for like an hour with this friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, and I remember thinking, I'm pretty good at that. Why am I good at that? That's so weird. And it was exactly what you said. It's the creative process. What you have, you're looking at a situation, and you're trying to draw what you can make out of this situation that seems rather nothing, but there is something there, and that's what the creative mind does, So definitely, you definitely have that ability. Let's jump a little bit into your actual show because.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What prompted you to decide? Okay, I'm gonna start a podcast. Like, what was?
Excuse me. Yeah. So originally, I had done before the My Peeps Show podcast. I had done a podcast, the Nerdy Harry channel, which actually it spoke to you as well as some other amazing indie.com people and I really enjoyed doing the other podcasts where we talked about comics and movies and everything with Joey Henry. Joey, if you're listening. And anyways, it was just so difficult with our schedules, our work schedules, to always be able to find time to do it. So when we weren't able to get together to do it, I had kind of thought, well, hey, why don't I do interviews where I speak to people? And I had started to meet some of you through indie.com. And I thought, well, this would be kind of cool. To speak to these really cool people who I admire their work and just them in general. and I would love to hear their story. And so anyways, unfortunately, the Nerdy Harry channel disappeared. And I had told my wife, I said, I think I really want to try to do a podcast where I just speak with people and kind of do what I was doing over the Nerdy Harry channel there at the end. And so I thought, well, I'll just speak with family and friends and just get to know my family and friends. And maybe someday my kids or my grandkids could go back and listen to it and learn about my family and friends, and also learn about me. Because, thanks. And it was a good idea originally, I thought. But then I realized, wow, nobody wants to talk on a podcast. And I understand. Not everybody wants to get on there and tell their whole life story, especially, family and friends. But anyways, so my first guest was actually Marty Ussery, who's my music guy, my Paul Schaefer to the David Letterman. Mm-hmm. And, and I really I was like, wow, after the first one, I knew this is something I really want to do. And I knew that in doing my comedy videos before, quote unquote comedy videos, I shouldn't. Yeah. That's a word that's easily thrown around, right?
If they made you laugh, then they're comedy videos. They made me laugh.
Yeah, I guess. Well, thanks, man. But I knew when I went in to do those videos, I go all in, and 110%. There's no 70% with me. When I go in on something like that, especially when it's creatively something, I just go all into it. And with the podcast, I wanted it to be I didn't want to be the best podcaster, the best show. I just wanted to talk to people. I thought this is a great opportunity to hear people's stories. And from there, I started going, I wonder if I could talk to people like overseas as well, like just to kind of hear their stories. And that's a scary thing for somebody who only, kind of spoke with family and friends. And you really, it's a sink or swim thing when you go into talking to a complete stranger. And as you know, and so, and it's not that I don't know that it's a talent. Maybe it is. I don't know. Because I think with practice and with studying, with learning, anybody can do it. But one thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to be so formal about it. I wanted it to be just a conversation. Right. And it was easy for me to sell that to people who are my family and friends, maybe people that weren't well known culturally, but as far as the number one singer in the world or whatever. Right. But it was a little more harder to sell to people who are higher up on the chain there. Because I don't see it as an interview. Like I love a good conversation. I want people when they listen to the podcast to feel like you're just sitting in a room with those two people and you're there listening to them. You're actually there with them. And not that there's anything wrong with the formalness of interviews, because I've heard some amazing interviews. And again, you do a great job with it as well. I love just a good conversation, though. I love informalness of it, laughing, snorting, burping, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I just want to feel like, hey, for an hour, you get to relax and get to learn about my story, and I get to learn about yours. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And, I think that it's one of those decisions that, you have to make early on, which you did, like you want to do it and you want to do it for the right reasons. And I think what you said was fantastic, that you want to, maybe people will learn about you and, your kids and their grandkids, because, wherever this is going to be, this will be here for a while, I'm assuming. Yeah. So, we'll download them also and just have them on some disc that they'll find in space.
Exactly.
Use them to populate their planet.
Of course, they'll read my name, my title of my podcast, and be like, "My Peep Show." That might be not to our content, our kind of content. Peep Show, what's going on? That's hard to sell, John. Yeah. When I go to publicists and managers, My Peep Show. Wait a minute, what kind of podcast is this?
I would think it's actually easy to sell. People would be like, "Oh, I want to hear that."
No, and especially when you message people and My Peep Show comes up in your messages, that's probably hard to go, another one of these accounts.
Well, it's got to come with definitely a really, really good tagline, this is not what you think.
Not a porn podcast.
Right, not a porn. Just say it straight up.
No, it's just a dude, just a guy.
So one of the things that I said also was about the laid back conversation. You know, I like the format of being more laid back and just having have the guests be very comfortable to talk about what they currently do. They're creative, if they're the creative field, or if they're in the business side of life, which is also creative as well. Whatever side that they're on, talk about that. But also, I want to kind of get to know them a little bit, and so we have just like you said, it's just a conversation that's laid back. I really don't want to do a really serious, I don't know, Charlie Rose kind of a situation where it's just really breaking down.
Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hello.
Yeah. Exactly.
Little Larry King live there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if I want to do something like that, but who I like, and nobody remember. I mean, I'm showing an age, even though this is actually before my time, but Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
I always liked Dick Cavett because he was very laid back. He let the guests kind of like do their thing, and he wasn't, Johnny Carson was the master at letting the guest shine, and him being
absolutely.
just as funny, but also letting, and Letterman and those guys. Do you think, as a host, I want to ask you a question as the host, are you familiar with the other style of other podcasts and how they actually run their? Did you research other podcasts?
That's a really good question. Originally, when I first started to listen to podcasts, I never even thought about starting one. So when I listen to podcasts, I think the creative thing comes back into play where, remember we said we look at people, we look at situations, and we're always thinking about things. I think with the podcast, when I would listen to podcasts, I was thinking to myself, you know what I'd like to ask them? I'd like to know this as well. So I was always kind of storing, again, the creativeness of, if I had my own podcast, not that I wanted one, if I had one, I'd love to ask somebody this and be a little more laid back with it. Because I would listen to some conversations podcast where I go, oh, wow, that's really cool. And that's cool that they found that. And then I'd hear others where I felt like, oh, I'd much with that person that they're speaking to, I'd rather hear them be a lot more laid back rather than a formal conversation. And so Johnny Carson is someone who definitely, even though I'll be 43 this year in October. And but I remember as kids, my mom would actually buy these Johnny Carson best of collections, and she'd bring those home. And me and my brother would watch those. And I'm a kid in my teens. How many teens were sitting at home watching Best of Johnny Carson, and I loved it. I loved when Rickles would be on there, and they're all having, Dean Martin and Sinatra, like all these guys just having a great time with Carson. And it just looked really fun. And I would say probably the next person, and probably the person that had the biggest influence on me, was Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien changed the way I looked at how to speak to people. How to do it. Yeah, definitely. When I would stay up late at night on school nights and just, just to see what he would do. And I loved how he laughed, and he wasn't so formal about the show. He didn't care if things messed up. He'd just laugh about it and make fun of it. And I loved that. And so that had a huge influence on me. Again, I never watched Conan thinking someday I want to talk to people like Conan. But all these years later, now when I speak to people, it definitely, I see where that came from, that little seed that was planted there for me. But yeah, I love general conversation with people. I have in my interviews, my conversations, whatever you want to call them, my podcast, my questions of torture and awesomeness. And I know for people that are a little higher up on the ladder that I've spoken to are a little bit surprised by some of the questions because they're super laid back. It's simple questions like, what's your favorite movie, song that always makes you smile, things like that. Right. And because I love to hear your story. That's amazing. But I also want to hear, what are you watching at night on a Thursday night when you're just laid back and chill? Because at the end of the day, silly, as generic as it sounds, we all are doing the same thing. We've laughed, we've cried, we put our pants on, our shirts on, our dress on, whatever. we're all so much alike. And I've mentioned this on the podcast numerous times. We're so much alike. We just don't talk enough to realize that we're so much alike.
Right.
And I hope by the end of my conversations, you've talked to a guy that you had no idea who he was, but at the end you go, wow, I'm kind of like that person, or I can relate to that person. So
right. That's really important to really make sure that you ask questions that are going to make the guest feel like you really care about something about them. And because that really opens people up, like for me, like I like asking questions, very involved in like how the process, like when you get up in the morning, like what's one of the first things you do? People are like, oh, usually they're going to say like, something more technical or something more serious, but I want to know certain things because people are not there during those times. If you're a film actor, people see you on the film, on the screen. They know what you did on the screen. If you're a director, they see your movies, or if you're a musician, they hear your music. So we got all that information already. We have it, and it's wonderful to talk about. But I want to know, like, when you wrote this song, did you write it first on a guitar, or was it a piano? Or did the lyrics come further? I want to know something of how they came up to. And I think that keeps the conversation fresh. And it also makes the, like you said, the audience know the person a little bit more, understand a little bit more. Just getting back to Carson and Conan. Carson, for me, I'm about 10 years older than you are. And I remember I learned timing and sarcasm. I learned that by watching Johnny Carson as a little kid. And I don't know what the hell I was doing watching Johnny Carson at 11 o'clock at night. Or it used to be an hour and a half show. It would come on at 11, and it was like an hour and a half. And for some reason, my grandparents couldn't get me to bed for some reason. And so I would watch this show. And, when he would turn around and kind of like, I understood that. Like, I didn't know why it was funny or anything, but I understood that moment, and I remember as I got older realizing, and now I get why that's funny, and I would go back in my mind, think, okay, that's funny. And then Conan, also, I'm glad you mentioned Conan because he really did something that was unique to the business. He sort of like what Letterman did when he first came in.
Yeah.
When Letterman first came in, those first 10 years, following Johnny, were really groundbreaking for a talk show because he was doing off the wall kind of weird stuff, and he was experimenting and
completely different from Carson.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those two guys kind of covered it. I think Leno kind of took over a little bit like what Johnny did, I think that's why
Conan was to Jay. Even though those two names together,
careful.
I know. Trust me, I know. But I think Dave was to Johnny as Conan was to Jay. Jay was definitely more of a formal. He had a way that he did his show. It was the jokes. It was talk to the guest and the little skit and talk to the guest. And here comes Conan where you don't know what's going to happen. And Dave was the same way to Johnny. So that was really interesting how it was kind of that formula.
And that you mentioned that because both of them didn't get it.
That's true.
Even though they came right, they were right there during the whole run. They didn't.
So true.
Even though Conan had it for whatever 7 months.
That hurts me. You've hit a soft spot.
Yeah.
Conan. That's.
Yeah, I know. I still go. You know what I do? I torture myself. Right? I go on YouTube and I watch videos of people that write about the feud. And people just like.
I read the book. Did you read the book? There was a really good book about it. It's a really good book about it. Yeah. Oh goodness. What was?
Oh, so it wasn't one of them.
No. It wasn't one of them. It was just a guy who kind of knew what was going on about the transition and then how it all kind of blew up and stuff. And really only those two guys know what happened. But
I'm not afraid to give my opinion on it. I mean, Jay's retired from that, so he won't keep me off the show. But
you may not get the Tonight Show now, John. Be careful. NBC could be listening.
But listen, I really thought that was a little bit of sabotage. Because, and I don't know how you feel about it, and I'll ask you, when I'm done with my little, 30-second rant. But I thought that he had a great opportunity, Conan, to take over the show at the top. But now here comes Jay is going to get a 10 o'clock slot right before his show with the same show.
Exactly.
Don't tell me that it's not another show. It's the same show,
Exactly.
And I thought that was really, really a low blow to do something like that. And and Jay could have done anything. He could have had any show he wanted on NBC at any time, doing whatever he wanted to do. He chose to do the exact same thing that he had been doing for whatever, 15 years at that point, or 16 years, whatever. And I just really thought that was not okay. Now I've heard more interviews with Jay Leno on it, and I kind of understood a little bit of his side of it as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And Conan's side, Conan, I think got the short end of that deal for sure. And he went to TBS, and was it TBS? No, TN.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's TBS. He's still doing Conan over there. He's got a little bit. He's definitely got a different format.
Yeah.
Now.
Really,
it's as far. Yeah, it is. It's different. Conan just, again, it goes back to, I love the. He just didn't care if anything messed up, and he didn't care if, the guests kind of, like Conan's like us, I think in a lot of ways where I don't like it when, I shouldn't say I don't like it. I definitely don't want to say that. But when you pretend like you're all in on the guest, like don't have a guest on the show if you don't want them on the show. Like if you're not interested, and don't have a guest on your show just to have a guest on your show. That's the good thing about doing a podcast, that we can pick and choose in that regard. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say that, just to that point, and then let you continue, that sometimes they don't have a say, because they're There
absolutely
there are a lot of advertisers, and this person is hot. They have to be on an MTV reality show, and they're hot right now, and we got them on the show.
Yeah,
you got.
And I think and I don't want to compare the podcasting to those guys, because you're absolutely right. That's studio stuff, and that's managers, and that's publicity and all that stuff. But I've heard on podcasts before. I've heard podcast interviews, and you can just tell the guest or the host is just not all in on it. Now maybe he's having a bad day, or he or she's having a bad day. Is having a bad day, but like I've tried to with my podcast, there's times that I don't always know who the person is, but I'm interested in what they do, like a sport, or they've done a movie, or they've done songs or things of that nature. So I want to learn about how that came about, but then also learn about them. But you've got to have, at least, let me phrase that. I don't want to say you got to have, because it's your podcast. You can do whatever you want to with it. But I think when you're going to speak with someone, be interested in them or what they do, because genuineness will come across. Absolutely. At least to me, it does. It maybe not to everybody, but I think the guest is going to get genuineness as well.
Right.
I think that's why hopefully my guests, when they've been on the podcast, have been like, wow, this person actually cares and looked and researched and all that.
Yeah. And I agree 100%. And I think that's what made the original guys, the Jack Parr, Steve Allen, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno. Sometimes I don't know.
Jay was good. Jay was good. I can't deny it.
But I think Jay was really talk show guy.
Yeah.
He was talk show guy, and even though he was a stand-up comedian, that was his first gig. But
a great stand-up comedian too. A really great stand-up comedian.
Really great one, and he became. The guy's a legend.
Yeah.
And he actually has done amazing. But I like Johnny Carson's style and Letterman's style more, because they had a little bit more, what you said, that really all in on the guest.
Mm-hmm.
They really were all in on the guest. And even if Letterman gets a really bad guest, which he's had some doozies, right?
A lot.
He takes it to the next level. He makes fun of the situation.
Yeah, makes fun of him. Yeah, makes fun of the situation, right?
Yeah, and to me, I think that brings up the whole idea of what it is to be a host. Because you got to be ready for everything. You got to be ready for everything and anything. what do you think about the whole that whole thing with the current late night host lineup?
I don't really watch it, and I really didn't get to finish. I'm going to connect that question with your another question you'd asked me. I originally listened to podcasts, and once I started podcasting, I stopped listening to all podcasts. I really did. I was so afraid because I wanted to have my own style.
Yeah.
And I was super afraid that if I listened to other people's podcasts, then I was going to go, man, that works. So I'll kind of start to include that into my podcast. And then I'm not Anthony. I felt like I was going to lose the genuineness of Anthony. It's not that I believe Anthony's this great, high and mighty person to be speaking with. but I wanted you to understand this is who I am, and this is, so I really stopped I stopped listening to podcasts, at least interview podcasts. Now I would still listen to, comic podcasts, movie podcasts. We got some friends of mine, the Countdown to Geek 10. I would listen to their podcast. So like I would listen to like geek and nerdy stuff, but like as far as interview, I really got away from that. I don't watch late night stuff now, just because as silly as it sounds, I know I'm just a regular little guy doing this small little podcast. I'm afraid if I do it, I'm gonna have this. I have to include that in how I speak to my guests, and not that there's anything wrong with it. If you want to always grab and take from other people, that's more power to you. But I felt like it was going to take away from the authenticity of my conversation as myself.
You're right. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people probably think that, and we all draw inspiration from other people that are doing what we want to do. Right. So, I mean, like I started listening to, I made the mistake of listening to too much Joe Rogan because podcast, and I do want to talk about him a little bit in a second. But he's just a powerhouse in the podcast space.
Yeah. So, he's kind of changed the game.
Yeah. Changed the game. So I just was listening to a lot of them just to see. And then in the first couple of shows, or maybe a little bit afterwards, I started kind of trying to do that, and I realized it's a completely different format. First of all, he's got the 2 hours of free time. He's just very laid back. He sort of starts the show like, "Hey man, how's it going?" You know what I mean? And and it's all fine, and that's his thing, and it's working, obviously. But I do know what you mean by that, because then you do lose who you are if you start kind of focusing on these guys.
And then I think it loses the funness of the interviews for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not thinking of your guests or whatever. You're thinking about what you're doing. And I'm like,
exactly.
I want to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you're thinking about, I got to make sure I don't, I got to be this way. And this is the format of the show. This is how we have to do things. Just again, if you're doing a podcast and you want to listen to others and grab and take here and there little things, there's nothing wrong with that. I was just afraid for me personally that I would take away from the authenticity of my conversations. I've had the opportunity. First season, it was definitely more. I don't want to say local, because I actually in the first season I jumped in the deep end. If I would have thought about it, I wouldn't have probably done it if I'd have second guessed it. But I was by the probably fifth or sixth guess, I was talking to people from England who I didn't know. I just admired their work. I've talked to people from the Magic of Traveling, BB and Ace, from their travel bloggers from Bulgaria. This guy from Tennessee was like, "Hey, email these travel bloggers from Bulgaria and see if they want to talk." I mean, that's a big gamble right there, but I just knew if I was authentic, I wanted to ask them questions. What's there to be afraid of? Again, have an interest in your guest or what they're doing, and all the rest will fall into place. But if you don't have an interest in what they do or who they are, it'll come across and you'll hate it. I just think you will.
I can't agree with you more. That's absolutely on point. What did you think of the whole Joe Rogan changing the game? What did that mean for you?
For me, nothing. I mean, it's I really I've listened to some Joe Rogan interviews here and there, just bits and pieces of guests that he's had on before. What's that?
On YouTube, because they pop up all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube. But and I remember Joe back on news radio, so it's kind of weird for me to still not see him as the weird maintenance guy from news radio, the goofy maintenance guy from news radio. But man, he does more power to the guy. He's really anybody that can do their own thing, which I believe that Joe's doing. I can't help but go, hey, good job for you. And I mean, that's what I try to do with my podcast, is my own thing, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think it changed the game for a lot of podcasters, including yourself, because you think about what he's done. He suddenly made podcasting very, very profitable across the boards for everyone. So he got a $100 million deal with Spotify to go to just be exclusively for Spotify. Not only that, but all his YouTube videos are going to be taken down and put on a brand new platform that Spotify is putting out.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And for new videos. And when you really, it's really crazy. So YouTube really lost out a lot. Now he got $100 million, and let me just go over some of the numbers real quick. So Spotify basically had it said, $100 million. You bring your YouTube videos, your show here. You can do whatever you want, because YouTube was a little bit restrictive on some stuff. So they said you can come on here, do whatever you want, do the same show you want to do. There's no control. Now we have. He was like, all right, cool, that's a good deal. So he took the deal. Within 48 hours, Spotify stock went up about, I think it was like 5% or something, which meant it was like billions.
Yeah, that's insane.
They're the biggest music platform in the world. So so when you think about how much money, they gave $100 million to this one guy, but their stock went really up. They're going to start looking, and they didn't go after number 2, number 3, number 4. They went after number 1.
Yeah.
So that they're going to be going after number 2. So Spotify is definitely a place that we need to all actually look into and pay attention to. And whenever they start rolling out, jump on it early. It's really important, because I think what Joe did, people used to be like, oh, I have a podcast, and they'd be like, oh, that's nice. It wasn't. But when you have a podcast today, it's much different. It's much different. You have a piece of power that for.
I'll tell you something. I may regret saying these words, but and I hope this doesn't come across as heartless as it may sound, but like me personally, I really could care less what happens to my podcast, because, and this is why I say it, because like I have a full-time job as a machinist during the week, so that's my living. Now, again, if somebody, the first thing someone would say to Anthony, well, Anthony, if you got offered $100 million, of course, I'm not a freaking idiot. Of course I would do what Joe's doing.
Questions like that?
Yeah. Like, you don't even have to ask me that question. We know the answer. Right. So, but I'll say this, like, I just started this podcast to talk to people. And I'm very big about my conscience. And if I feel like, if I want to be the best podcast, in America, or Tennessee, or Middle Tennessee, or this small little town that I'm in, I'm losing sight of the point of the podcast. And the point of the podcast for me, not for everybody else, is just talk to a lot of awesome people. And that's just like, I mean, John, like, I've gotten to speak. I'm not trying to go, okay, here's where I promote my podcast.
No, yes.
So
I was going to ask you next. Talk to me about the guests that you've had, and
so okay, I'll throw some of them out there. When I started this, there's some people that I wanted to talk to, and I knew there was no way on this earth I was going to be able to talk to these people. But why not? Why not try? Okay, and along the way, I've got to speak to Lisa Loeb, Grammy Award. Like my biggest teenage crush probably was like Lisa Loeb. I thought she was amazing, and I loved her song, the video, her style, everything was amazing. And I got to speak to Lisa Loeb. So if I were to go back and tell 16-year-old Anthony, hey, by the way, so many years from now you're going to speak to Lisa Loeb, I'd be like, number one, what's a podcast, Anthony? But number two, like down on like number 23 question, I would have probably said, are you serious? Like I get to speak. So that, and then like, I got to speak with John Kassir, who's the voice of the Crypt Keeper. Like that's teenage Anthony, like who used to watch those on HBO. And who would have thought I get to speak? And my favorite, honestly, the person who made me want to be a stand-up comedian for years was Sinbad. And yeah. And so I've got to speak. And then, I knew in season 1, I wanted to talk to somebody who'd climbed to the top of Mount Everest. I've always been intrigued by Mount Everest. And I got to speak to somebody who climbed top of Mount. So all these people I've spoke to have something with me throughout my life at some point that I've wanted to know about, whether it be them or whether it be something that they do. And so, again, it just gets back to that, make sure it's something that you're interested in, and then the authenticity. I hate to keep hammering that, but that's just something that's so important for me.
Yeah, it's tremendously important. And I think if you lose that, then it doesn't become fun anymore, because now you're doing it. But do you think that do you want to grow your podcast, or is it something that you're just thinking like if it's gonna grow organically, it's gonna grow, you're gonna put a lot of effort into it, or just what happens?
I don't really put a lot. I don't put a lot of effort into it growing. I put a lot of effort into getting amazing guests. I can put all the effort in the world to the thing to grow and promote it and really push it. And that may be great. But if I don't have guests that I want to speak to, what fun is it? Right. So I'd much rather have a small little podcast that maybe nobody's heard about, that I get to speak to some amazing people from around the world. And that's the reward for me. Right. The reward is I get to speak to them. And, it's one thing to just get to speak to people locally, but when you get to hear people's stories from around the world, I mean, that's a really cool opportunity. That's why I love podcasting is, you've got an opportunity to speak to people from around the world. Yeah, absolutely. And something, I don't know if you wanted to get into this, but I want to hammer this because whether I do 100 more episodes or no more episodes of podcasting, I'm going to tell you the most important thing I feel like that makes a good, and I'm going to say it again and again and again. Okay. 2 things that's going to make your podcast as far as interviewing important: persistence. Like, okay, I ought to tell you, John Kassir, it took me 13 months to get him on my podcast.
Oh, wow.
13 months, John, of an email, a message here and there. Hey, John, how you doing? Hope you're doing good. I wasn't always saying, hey, will you be on my podcast? Right. It was, hey, man, happy 4th of July. Hope you're doing good. Hey, so-and-so, have a wonderful weekend. And don't do it to butter them up. Do it because you genuinely mean it. And so I've had on my show, there's some I've had to take. It's taken, John was probably 13 months. I've had a few others that are 6, 8, 9, 10 months of emails, messages, persistence, and don't be a butthole. Like simple advice. Don't be a butthole. Be nice, be genuine. And when somebody says no, that's okay. Yeah. And let them know that's okay. Don't just be mad and sulk and pout because you didn't get your guess. Send them an email back because, you go, hey, thanks anyways. I appreciate it. Best of luck to you. And I've done that with every single no I've had. I think it's 82 episodes, and I've had probably 500 no's. That's no joke. You can ask my wife. It's emails, messages. That's a lot of no's, and you have to be prepared for a lot of no's. If you're not prepared for, if you're not mentally prepared for that, you'll burn out within 20, 25 episodes. Be prepared that you're, possibly nothing against your family or your friends. They may not want to share and like and comment on everything. Be prepared for that. It's not that they don't like your stuff. It's just that, you're just part of the scroll, and that's not a bad thing. They just see you throughout the day. And it's not because they don't like you. Be prepared for that. Understand it's not because they don't appreciate you, love you, care for you. You're just part of the scroll in Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. But that's why you have to, it comes back to the original thing. Are you loving doing what you're doing? It's like with music, John, with acting, you ask anybody that's been through acting, like you've got to love it because you've got to go through those difficult times. I'm not going through the difficult times to be famous. I'm going through difficult times to speak to amazing people. So.
Right. That's awesome, man. I mean, what great advice for anybody that's interested in pursuing not just podcasting, but really everything, because that really falls true to everything. Everything that you just said, it really is persistence. It's it's a numbers game. You got to get out. Actually, your guest number 60 for me.
Nice. Woo, 60.
Yeah.
I love that number. That's the best number.
I know. Awesome, right? So, so 60, and I've had no's. I've had interesting enough, I've had no response. Like
that's a lot of those.
That I kind of even not know, but have a somewhat of a relationship with, just no response. Maybe they didn't get it. I mean, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, but
or the ones where let me get back to you, or try back in a few months, and you try back in a few months, and it's try back in another few months. Can you be persistent? And there's two words I use for this, and I've told my wife about this, and my little secret to My Peeps Show podcast. You ready for this, John? It's the secret sauce. You ready? Respectful persistence. Be nice. Like Dalton says in Roadhouse, be nice.
Right.
And be nice to people, because you know what? Especially in acting, in California, they're not used to people. I'm not trying to be mean to everybody, but a lot of people in California, or that's around the entertainment business, there's not a lot of genuineness and niceness in it. So it can throw people when you're trying to be genuinely nice. But if you are nice and you are persistent, respectful persistence, it'll take you so much further than you know. And even Conan O'Brien said it on his last episode, be nice, and these great things are going to happen. Yeah. And that's something I've definitely taken to heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Respectful persistence. I love that.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
That is so profound. I also think that waiting and giving it time and space, and not saying I need this to do this today.
That's hard. That's so hard to do.
It's hard. I know. But at the same time, you said 13 months. But what if you would have only done 2 months? You say, I've been trying for 2 months and I can't get them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I've been there before, John. I've been there before where a guest, even today, I still struggle with it. I still struggle with guests who I can't get and that I'm working on, that tell no, or not right now, I'm just too busy. And then you see them doing other podcasts. You're like, well, what about me?
Hey, man.
But, be nice, respectful persistence. And John Kassir told me, I can't remember, he said it on air or off air. I thought he said it on air, but maybe not. I don't know. But he told me the reason he did the podcast was because I kept trying, and I was and that I was nice about it, and I kept trying. And that meant so much to me, because respectful persistence is something that I'm not good at a lot of things in life. I'm not. But one thing I am good at is trying and really going for something. And if I want something, I promise you won't beat me at it. If I want to speak to a guest, and you can tell me no, and I'll leave you alone. But if you don't tell me no in that first email or that first message, you'll hear from me in a couple of weeks, couple months, maybe even a year. I'm still trying to get people on my podcast 3.5 years later.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll happen, but if it don't, that's okay.
Yeah. And that persistence, does it ever, where do you think you got that from? Was that family or just
You know,
your wife?
maybe it was family. My mom was super, super like somebody who is such a role model as just a person that is tough and
Mm.
really, really tough mentally, and just somebody. Maybe that's where it come from. I think also, you know, I guess that's a good question. You stumped me on that one, but I think mom is definitely a part of it. My mom's a huge inspiration to me. But also, I'll say this as well: bonus points, brownie points for my wife. When I've been discouraged, it's important to have somebody to support you.
Yeah.
And you know, I had somebody who was, that's okay if they said no. Just give you an example. I spoke with Sinbad actually 2 times. A little horror story. I don't know if you remember when it happened, but like last year, I think it was October. And again, Sinbad is my favorite comedian, stand-up comedian of all time. Especially as a kid, somebody who I really looked up to and was a role model to me as wanting to be a stand-up comedian. And I got to speak with him. And John, after we had the most awesome and fun conversation, me and his son, Royce Adkins, had a great conversation. And after it was done, John, I was like, well, let me make sure everything's okay. And I went to listen to it. Audio was junk.
Oh, no.
So there was my once in a lifetime opportunity to speak with somebody who had such a role model. Audio was junk. So, I mean, you want to talk about your heart dropping. And I mean, that sucked. That was where you just go, you know what? I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But I actually, you know, let them know what had happened. And, you know, was like, hey, look, if we could make it happen, that's great. But if not, you know what? Thanks at least for the opportunity for me able to speak to you. Because, and my son and my wife had pointed out to me, you know, even if you don't get to speak to him again, you got to speak to him. How many people that are fans of Sinbad would have loved to have an hour conversation with Sinbad? That's and right. So that to have that support system of my family to lift me up and go, get back up on your feet, that's huge for me. And so that plays a big part in, you know, the success of the podcast, at least for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, you know, you have such a good viewpoint about people and about the industry and about how to go about things. Yeah, absolutely.
Please go on, John.
Because, no, thanks, man. Well, I mean, you did send a check, so I have it here. I have to.
Don't cash that until tomorrow. Tomorrow at midday. Then we're good.
but you know, in this industry, you really need that, man, because right now, you know, Hollywood, like you said, you know, Hollywood is very tricky. You know, there are great people there because I know a lot of people that are over there, and they're fantastic. They're the best people on that I can think of, you know. But there's another side of it that's like really dark and really scary, and you have to do things to get work that, you know, you have to degrade yourself. A lot of people. And I don't mean degrade yourself like in like a girl degrading herself in some type of sexual way. I'm talking about character-wise, you know, integrity. You know, you just degrade yourself that way by having to deal with people that are really just, you know, they may be above you financially, but they're so below you in every other aspect that really becomes the tragedy of a lot of people that head out there, you know?
Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing too, John, like, when it comes to actors and actresses, and just really people in, I don't want to say actors and actresses because that's not the case. Let me erase that off the chalkboard there. But I've had people who, and I would never say yes. I've been very fortunate to speak to amazing people on my podcast. Have I had people that surprise me about maybe how they really were? Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of go, oh man, that kind of sucks. I was hoping they were, you know, but that's just me putting them in the light that I thought that they were in, and that's not their fault. They are who they are. So that's on me. But when you're doing this, you're going to find sometimes people just aren't good. And sometimes people aren't nice. I've had situations where where I go, do I really want to speak with this person? I don't know. And so I've bailed when I realized that maybe gosh, this sounds bad. Like this sounds so selfish of me to say this. But I want people to speak to me because they want to, not because, this movie or this thing is coming out. Now that's okay. If you do use that, that's fine. That's totally fine. But it won't be fun for you if you got to come on here and be generic with me. And you're probably used to, one thing, I don't know if you've ever had this before, but have you ever got hey, can you tell me all the questions you're going to ask me? Have you ever got that before where like they want to know all the questions? And hey, I understand that.
Not a lot, but I think a few people have that.
And I've had that a little bit, and that's okay because I understand you want to be prepared and you don't want to sound like an idiot on the mic. I get it. But I don't like that for me because it takes away from conversation. If
I
got to, yeah. Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. That's courage, my friend.
I say, you know what? They're going to be very basic questions about, and then the conversation will actually develop. And then as the conversation develops, I'll ask you things, but it's not going to be anything that's going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and that same with me. And that's what I've always tried to tell people. Like, I'm not going to put you in a position. My goal is to not make you look bad. I'm not here to.
It's a very safe space is what I tell people. It's the safest space you can be in.
Yeah,
I'm going to be
exactly
acknowledging. I'm going to listen to you and ask you questions based on what I think is interesting, but really not what's interesting to the audience, what's interesting to me. And hopefully what's interesting to me would be interesting to the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say probably something that I can't just seem to get rid of it. That's a character personality about myself. When I speak to people or when I get to know people, I love making friendships. I believe like try to make as many friends as you can and make a difference, because how can you make a difference in the world if you're locked in a little closet and nobody can see you and nobody knows who you are, nobody knows what you're about? But make friends, make genuine friendships and show what kind of person you are and be a good person and show people that there's good people out there. In indie.com, I've made so many, I've made 5, 6, 7 friends from indie.com when we talked about at the beginning. From my guest, I hope that every single one of my guests I speak to want to be my friend. That sounds so childish and elementary school, middle schoolish kind of thing. But because I'm excited to speak to you and I hope we can be friends. But if we're not, that's okay. I'm not going to go cry afterwards. Lisa Loeb, why weren't you be my friend? But anyways, that's okay. But since I've started this podcast, John, I've made some genuine friendships, I believe, where, I actually, message them and we message each other and say, hey, how you doing? Or, happy 4th of July or whatever, happy New Year. Don't just, at least I can't be that way. I invest into my guest. And in that way, I've made some friendships along the way. I'm sure I've annoyed people along the way. And when you don't answer my messages or texts, for a hello, that's okay. I'll let it go. And, whatever, I'll delete your number and I won't bother you no more. But believe it or not, though, I mean, if you're just genuinely nice and, you're genuine, let me just write, if you're just genuine with people, that'll show and they'll appreciate that. So yeah, I hope that's come across with people, that I hope I can be genuine. I'm not perfect by any means, but I hope I can be somebody that you can look back on maybe 20 years from now and go, who was a genuine friend? Anthony. That or genuine conversation. Anthony, My Peeps Show, something like that would be the ultimate compliment for me. I
actually have no doubt in my mind that would be your legacy for sure.
Oh, thanks, man.
Because you say you really do make it about the guest, finding out about the guest, but because it's your interest, like if it wasn't your interest, you wouldn't, you wouldn't be doing this. And right. And I have the problem, which is funny. I don't know if you have the same problem, but I have the problem where
I've got tons of problems, John. I've got tons of problems.
Well, the ones I could talk about publicly. This one in particular, when I meet someone if I like, for some reason, I don't know if this is something that I was, born with or was something injected to me at some point, but when I meet someone within like 2 to 3 minutes, I can love that person as a friend, and I just want to be that person's friend. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah,
it
same
comes
way.
off a little bit too much.
Needy, clingy. Yeah.
for some
I'm the same
people,
way. That's
and
my thing
I
too.
have none of that. Like I don't have a need for friends. I have a lot of friends, but when I meet someone, I want to have that connection because I feel that there's a positive energy there, and someone that I think that we can provide value to each other, as friends. So that's one of the things that I really sometimes, and I sometimes I miss the ball, and I do that with someone who's kind of like, the hell's wrong with you?
Please stop calling me John.
Yeah,
Please stop calling. This is the 5th time today.
And one thing I don't do is call or anything like that. I don't call, but I do message and stuff like that. We're approaching an hour. Are you okay to chat a little bit?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
cool.
good. Thanks, man.
I want to just actually go over a couple of people here saying, Sean Manuel said, "Good evening, gentlemen." So I think he was talking about here about the how they're going to get the podcast into you in the future.
Inject it into your brain. Hey, Sean, that's great. You maybe.
My
Peeps Show.
Hey, Mary Lawson, how are you?
Hey, Mary.
He says, "Great show. I agree.
Oh,
great.
So is my host.
And you're at the top of my friend list, John."
Thanks, John. That's a smart man, Sean. That's well said. Well said. Same here for me as well.
Thanks, man.
At least until I do the next podcast with another friend, and then
go.
I'll be like, "Oh no, you're the best. You're at the top of my list, buddy."
What was I thinking? So I tell this story, and I've told it before. I'm going to try to do the abbreviated version of it. But years ago, Paul Williams was a friend of mine. I think you might know.
Yeah,
know the story. But
I don't know the story, but I know who Paul Williams is. So.
Okay, yeah. So Paul Williams was somebody because he was short like me, and he was this huge singer and stuff. So growing up, he just was a guy that I kind of paid attention to because I was like growing up as a short dude. And in the 70s, he was the biggest thing in the world, right? Grammys, Oscars, and all that stuff. And so then he had a book coming out. And I saw a documentary on TV, and this is to the point of what you were saying earlier about persistence. And he had a documentary on TV, and I watched it a bunch of times, and I thought it was really great. And I was like, wow, I wonder if he's like on social media, because the whole documentary was based on the guy who's creating the documentary thought that Paul was dead, and he was like, I've always been a fan of Paul Williams. I think he died too young, and he went on YouTube, and he's like, wait a minute, he's alive. And that's actually the gist of the actual podcast, and it's called "Still Alive," And
that's wow.
Yeah, and it's a great podcast. I mean, it's not a podcast. I'm sorry. We're talking like a podcast in the brain. It's that's the point of the actual documentary. So anyway, I went on Twitter and I said, I wonder if he's on there, and I saw a guy, Paul Williams, no blue check mark or anything. Had like maybe like 700 people on it or something, right? Or maybe 1,000. I don't know. Not a lot. So I said, so I replied it back and I said, just to take a chance. I said, hey, just saw the documentary, still alive, hashtag to Paul Williams. I said, I thought it was really fantastic. Always loved his music. And he wrote back, hey, John, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Isn't that the coolest thing in the world?
And
the response.
And then I said, is this? And I was like, is this a fan page or is this really Paul? Because I want to make sure. I was like,
this is Gary from Iowa. I run his fan club. Thank you. I'm sure he would appreciate that.
He would totally appreciate that if I ever got to talk to him. He won't return I have a restraining order, so I don't think that's going to happen. So he says to me, he said, no, it's really me, and I started this account because I have a book coming out. So I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, wow. So again, I still don't know if it's really Paul, right? But I figured, you know what? Let me go along with this. What's it going to hurt? I'm here in my house, safe behind Twitter. So I said, yes. I said, cool. That's awesome. I'm a big fan. And we started a dialogue. So as he was putting out the book, he started putting actual things on the Twitter page of the actual book. So then I realized, oh, wait, this is really him. He wouldn't have snippets of the actual book, that he's writing with another writer. And all this other information and links to his personal new account website with the book information. And so as he was doing this, I kept retweeting his book, never really thinking anything about it. I kept retweeting it. I kept making comments and sharing it and talking about it and just engaging with it. 2 years, right? For 2 years, I'm doing this, right? So finally, the book is coming out. So I'm like, oh, cool, the book's coming out. I'm going to head over to Barnes & Noble and get it, right? He's appearing at Brooklyn at a Barnes & Noble in Brooklyn to do a signing of the book and to do some reading. So I was like, wow. I was like, that'd be great to go see him, right? Yeah. So I head over to Brooklyn that night and I buy the book and I get on and I get it and I sit down and sure enough, here comes Paul Williams with the other writer and I see him and stuff and I'm like, oh wow, that's so cool. So they get up and they start talking. He's very funny, you know, he's hilarious, and they read a little bit about the book. They talk about what the book is about, and a great book, by the way. It's called Trust, Gratitude and Trust. And it's a book about alcoholism that he went through, and also about other type of addictions that the other writer, which is Tracy Jackson, what she went through, which was like shopping and addictive to shopping and other people and stuff like that. So the book was kind of a balance of the whole thing, and it was really a great book. So I went over there and I'm sitting down watching them. So afterwards, they're doing the signing. So everybody gets online. This lady asked me, like, what's your, I guess this is not an abbreviated story. Sorry, everybody.
No, it's great.
If you heard it before and you're on, I apologize. But I tell it for a reason. And so anyway, she puts my name in the book. So when they open it up, they can see my name. So I said John Henry Soto. So she writes it in the book. They close the book. I'm standing online. I give her the book over to Tracy Jackson. She opens it and she sees John Henry Soto. And she goes, oh, "You're John Henry Soto." And I was like, yeah. And
security code 3. Security code 3.
That was my first thought. I was like, I swear I was acquitted. So Paul Williams is there, and he turns and he goes, John Henry. He's like,
oh, that's awesome.
They both stand up. They give me this huge hug.
John, that's amazing.
They bring me around the table where everybody online is like, who the hell is John Henry Soto? You know? And so
you're just like, hello, yeah. It's me.
So now I'm hanging out with them in the behind while they're signing and stuff. And so she says to me, "Did you see the back of the book?" And I was like, "No." She opens up, and in the back of the book, an acknowledgement to John Henry for all the help on promoting the book on Twitter.
Wow, John.
So they signed it. They both signed it, and I have this acknowledgement in the back. And I thought to myself, and afterwards, we became friends, and we still talk on on Instagram and stuff. And it took me out to lunch. We had lunch a couple of times. So just a great experience. Why? Because there was persistence on not wanting anything. Mm-hmm. I was just a fan, you know,
being genuine,
being completely 100% genuine, and and I was nice, you know, and just doing it was the reason why that happened. And, you know, it was such a big validation for me to be able to have one of my idols acknowledge me that way. That, you know, I always tell the story because I think it's important for persistence, but to be genuine while doing it.
Yeah. And you know what? The seed also, if somebody's listening to this, doing a podcast or thinking about doing a podcast and think, okay, I'm just going to be really nice when I go after people and just be nice and nice and nice. No, you were genuinely nice because you were a fan of the person. You were interested in the person. So again, we're not saying go out there and be genuinely nice to get somebody just to get somebody. Go get somebody that you really want to talk to. Not. I don't mean like
I'm gonna be so damn nice.
They're gonna be on my podcast. They're gonna hate me. I'm gonna be so nice. But you know, it started with. You know, you having a genuinely like you were a fan of the guy. That's why you were so nice. You respected him. You had a genuinely you had appreciation for him. So don't do a podcast. Don't take the advice of, well, okay, I'll just be genuinely nice when I go get people. You got to have that first seed of an interest and genuineness of that interest of that person first. Right.
And you have to answer your own question of why.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do any of this? You know, if you really have that down and you're like, I want to do this because blah. And it could be the craziest thing in the world. If you know, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, but you need to really have that and at least that should be your foundation. That's something that you stick to and
Yeah.
really focus on, and then that becomes where why you're genuine, because that is what
Right.
you want, and I think that's a really important part.
Yeah, and you can't. And listen, you can want to be the best podcast in the world and want to be the best host in the world, and then you can have those goals, and then go find these amazing people that you're interested in, or maybe subjects that you're interested in, and go do your podcast. We're not saying that's the wrong thing. That's okay. That's just something I'm not interested in. If it happens, yeah, it happens. If it don't, it don't. But I hope that 20 years from now, that I can look back, or even I can listen to my podcast and go, oh, wow, I got to speak with so-and-so, or I got to speak with somebody who did this. And even in that process, John, maybe 20 years from now, I can text or whatever this friend who I've made from the podcast and say, hey, remember this one time when we spoke about this, and make a genuine friendship from it. If that happens, it doesn't matter. But again, at the end of the day, like for me, that's not my goal. If that is your goal, that's fine. Just make sure you have that authenticity, or it's gonna, John, it's gonna show if you're not authentic in your passion for that podcast.
I wanted to briefly talk. I know we're going over an hour now, but let's just talk.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, by the way, please, any questions for Anthony, please shoot them down there now. But one of the things that I find, and this is, I'm not going to name any of the names, but there are a couple of talk show hosts in the evenings that I've been, and a couple of daytime people that I see that I can completely spot that they're not genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's become part of their shtick to be sort of like, and this is, I don't know where this happened. Like Johnny Carson would never try to talk down to a guest. Neither with Letterman, neither with Jay Leno, neither with Conan. But there are some guests that, and I like Fallon, actually. I do like Fallon. I think Fallon is a funny guy, talented guy. But there are some that they're out to get the guest. I feel like they're out to get them in some way, to ask them these really awkward questions and to put them in a position where they're uncomfortable and where they have to, and I've seen it time and time again with a couple of not too many, it's just a handful of these talk show hosts. And I really hope that the future is guys like Anthony Rece with that type of genuine understanding of humanity and wanting to be interested in people, and also wanting to put something into your life that you can take, that you can actually, like you said, 20 years from now. So you're looking ahead already at how this is going to impact you in a positive way 20 years from now. So how, of course, it's impacting you now positively, because that's look what you're looking forward to. So those kind of things are really, I hope that old stuff goes away and that we get just back to basics, and Hollywood gets back to basics, to making good movies and stuff,
same here. I think, what is the one phrase? World. Hey, thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Wow. You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change one person's world. And, that's where that genuineness comes in again. We're just beating that like a dead horse, but it's true. I've made genuine friendships from being, I hope they know that I'm a good person and a nice person, and that I'm actually interested in you. Again, I still speak with people from indie.com. That's 8 years now, maybe 7 years. 7 years.
I was going to say, because, I'll ask you, how long have you been married? I knew you before you got married. So
yeah. Oh gosh. Well, yeah. So 5 years. So
okay. So it was probably, because I don't know if you were. This is not to get too personal and stuff, but I remember when you guys met, because because
I know
you made it very public of how perfect this person is, and I remember making comments about
my wife Nicole is so, I don't mean to step on you by any means. I'm sorry about that.
Go for it.
But my wife Nicole is so supportive. When I originally wanted to do comedy videos, I was working weekend shift as a machinist at the time, and so I had Monday through Thursday to do whatever I want. My wife was working during the daytime, my kids were in school, so I was like, what am I going to do? And my mother, as a gift, had bought just a video camera. She's like, oh, film the kids growing up, just around the house, whatever, it's yours. And so I thought, growing up, I always wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I love Saturday Night Live, Kids in the Hall, In Living Color, all these shows that I just thought were just, I watched those shows, I think, a lot differently than most people did. I think a lot of people saw it as a funny show, but I was really kind of breaking down why it's funny and what they're doing to make you laugh, and really appreciating their art and the writing of it. And so, anyways, when I was like thinking about trying to do these comedy videos, I was like, you know what, and my wife was like, go for it, and that was amazing to have that support. And it was the same way with the Nerdy Harry podcast that I did. And then also now with My Peeps Show, it was just go for it. And, my kids are the same way, super supportive. And you got to have, and even if you don't have that support, even if you don't have the support, and there's people that deal with that, their spouse may look at it as that's really stupid. It's a waste of time. Now, don't neglect your family in order to do that hobby. That's, and it's easy to do. It's easy to get caught up into that. But, explain to them why you want to do it, communicate with them, and then they'll see the love and passion that you have for it, and hopefully they will support it. But if you don't have anybody, you're by yourself and you've got nobody for that support, this right here, this inside, that's your support, your heart. Go for it. Even if nobody around you supports you and they think you're an idiot, I promise you, there are so many people that have made it, quote unquote, made it, that didn't have anybody. I mean, there are so many books wrote about it. Oh my God. And it's great to have that support system. I'm blessed to have that support system. I know there's a lot of people that don't, but keep this right here. Stay true to who you are. I sound so cheesy and cliche, but it's true. It is true. I mean, you be your biggest supporter, and, stick to it.
That's right. I mean, you have to be your biggest supporter, because why should anybody then support you? Anybody be your fan if you're not your own biggest fan,
Yeah.
And
how are you going to sell, at least in the podcasting, how are you going to sell your podcast to a guest if you're not 100% invested into it, if you're not sold on it? Right. And that'll come across to managers and publicists too. They'll know. They'll know.
Yeah. And, you also have to take responsibility for the art. You have to say to yourself, this is, and I have these conversations with younger artists all the time. I'm like, yeah, you're an artist and I know you want success and everything, but you have to think of the responsibility you have, because God gave you for those of us that believe in God, right? God gave you a gift. Gave you a gift to either make people laugh, play an instrument, dance, sing, whatever that art may be, write, act. And it's your responsibility to use it to make the world a better place, to actually uplift the world. That's your responsibility. So if you're not doing it because that person's not supporting you, you're still accountable. Mm-hmm. You're still accountable. Now, sometimes, and I do tell people, and sometimes you do have to make drastic changes to move forward, to be happy in your life, right? You have your life, it's your life. And if you're in a relationship that's suppressive and they're not letting you do the things that you want to do.
I need to take notes on this. Hold on. Oh, this is good stuff. Good stuff. Go ahead, John. I'm writing this down. I need this. I need this. I'm kidding. Yeah, I know. Love you, buddy. I'm just kidding.
I know. No, I love it. So, if you, sometimes you have to make certain drastic changes, you have to, and unfortunately, and I tell this to people, people don't want to hear it. It could be a spouse. It could be a family member that's being the one that's suppressive and not letting you flourish. And you have to make certain drastic changes. You only have two options. You handle it like you said. You sit them down. You communicate to them. You communicate to them how important this is to you and what you think that this is going to benefit the family and yourself and others. That's number one. That's how you handle it, right? Or number two is, you have to disconnect in some way. disconnecting is really difficult because
Yeah.
you're looking at divorce, you're looking at not talking to your mom or your dad, and these are drastic changes. But the reason I talk about this a lot on my shows is because there are people right now who are suffering and suffocating because there are people in their environment that's not are not letting them reach that full potential. And they have to say things like, well, it's my, it's my mom, I can't like go against mom, and that's one of the things that you don't have to go against your mom, but your mom is wrong. And it's okay. It's okay. Like my kids, I don't expect my kids to think that I'm always right. You know what I mean? I can't have that. Now
You might want to edit this out, this part right here, so they don't hear this later on.
They're not going to see this first. But I don't want them to always think that daddy is just the right person all the time. That, you know what I mean? I want them to think for themselves, and I want them to respect me and listen to me because of who I am and what I've done, and because I've acknowledged them and I've let them achieve what they wanted to achieve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so absolutely. All these things for artists, especially, and us being artists that interview artists, like, it's even more important for us to really know, because this message has to get out there. And in 200 years, when this video is floating through space and some alien ship picks it up and pops it,
and it's going to inject it into our brain, like Sean said.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll know whether or not we'll have these values will carry on. And these things will carry on. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I tell you another thing too, and this may be getting a little more deep and personal when it comes to the relationship part of it. But remember this too: don't expect your spouse or parent or child or somebody to be all in on it if you're not all in on them. If you're not all I mean, in the same respect, remember, they've probably come to you without you realizing and look for your support, and you've probably laughed them off. So maybe you've already kind of given it to them after they've given it to you. So look at yourself and be aware of how you're treating those around you that are wanting to do something they want to do. Like, are you supporting your spouse, your child, your mom, your dad? Yes, even your mom and your dad. Are you supporting them? And then you might be surprised on what you get back from the people around you. A lot of times they're not giving it to you because you're not giving it to them. So it's always go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead. You're fine.
It's always communication, like what you said. It's just communication, and you have to be not afraid. And that comes from that love inside of you that really believes in what you're doing. If you truly, truly believe it, you can have a conversation with anybody about it, because you're being led by your heart, not by your brain that's telling you, oh, I'm not good enough or whatever junk is going on up there. But yeah, definitely. Sean, Sean, oops, that's not what I wanted to say. I want to say this. Sean is 100% right. Anthony Rece is a beast.
Oh, thanks so much.
Actually one more here. Great show, guys. Love the passion from this conversation. A lot of laughs as well, informative, entertaining, and yes, injecting into your.
I really appreciate Sean leaving some comments. That's really awesome. I love this. I love this arena that you have, for people to be able to interact. And I was really blown away that you asked me to be on here. I'm really honored. No joke. I think a lot of you've really inspired me. And I'm not trying to butter you up here. This is the honest truth. You've inspired me over the years just to see you go in and just not care. Like, this is your passion. You going for it. And I seen it in your videos. I seen it in your acting, and I see it, now with your interviews. Really, it's in everything. Real estate. I've seen you grow with all these amazing things over the years as I've gotten to know you. But even also as a husband and a father. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to want to hear my story or my viewpoint on things. I don't think I'm even close to the a good I don't my wife John, I just love talking to people. I love, as much as I've gotten to talk to amazing people that I admire, I've gotten to talk to people from around the world. That's mind blowing to me. I love that. I may never get to go to Norway or Ireland or Australia, but I've gotten to talk, or Bulgaria. But I've gotten to talk to people from these places who I found, John, that are just like me and you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's so awesome. And they're all over the world. We're all over the world, spreading positivity and creativity throughout the world. So everyone, please, a nice round of applause for Anthony Rece. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really,
no, thank you.
You're is that the right link down there, My Peeps Show?
Who cares if it's not, right? I'm not doing. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's I'm kidding. No, it's My Peeps Show on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio. I think those are kind of the main ones. And if you listen to my podcast, thanks, Sean. Thanks again, buddy. If you listen to my podcast, don't expect much. Just go into it. No. I mean that with the honest, sincere. Don't expect much. Just go in, and if you want to listen to two people talk, or three people, how many ever people I'm talking to, you just want to hear a good conversation, I'd be honored for you to take an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes of your day to listen to me talk to some amazing people, because everybody I spoke to has been amazing. And I'm honored that they've taken the time to want to speak to me. And I'm honored that you've taken the time to want to speak to me. Thank you to you. And also to the people that have left comments. I believe it's Mary and Sean. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Definitely come back. We have to talk some more. We have to work on our Todd Lloyd project.
Yes, we do. I will come back. I will come back anytime you want me on, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Have a great night. I will talk to you soon. Don't leave the broadcast just yet, but give me 1 second. I'll be right with you.
So no problem, bud.
All right. Thanks,
bye, everybody.
All right. So that was Anthony Rece. What a great guy. I knew this was going to be one of those conversations that I could probably just keep going, but I was like, he's probably got to eat, and he's got a family. He's got to do things. My family's already asleep, and I already ate. So, but anyway, I want to thank everybody for for watching the show. If you like these shows, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell so you get notifications. You can share this, especially this episode, because I think it has a lot of great content, not just for the podcast space, but for any space that you're in, especially the creativity space. So I hope this really was a tremendous value for all of you, because I know it was a tremendous value for me. So thank you all. I'll see you tomorrow night. Carlise Burke is going to be on, actress Carlise Burke. She's her second appearance. I'm really excited to have her back. And I'll see you all tomorrow night, 9:30. And as always, peace.